There's plenty of leadership advice in the world, but have you considered getting leadership advice from someone who has gotten millions of people to risk their lives for something they believe in? It's one thing to get people to buy something. It's a whole other level to get people to take action that could get them killed, jailed, or tortured. The principles that Srdja Popović teaches to activists around the world are so similar to the fundamentals of community building, which is the core of how to activate people and inspire them to take action for your mission. Whether you're leading a company, a community, a neighborhood group, or yes, even a pro-democracy movement, Srdja's advice around how to educate and empower people to do monumental things is so interesting, and yet also practical and easy to understand. It's also just really cool. I mean, who doesn't want to be a revolutionary? Srdja identified 3 things to start and scale a movement. Number 1 is to recognize human talent and nurture it. This means to find great people and provide them the tools to help them grow. Number 2 is to spread ownership by letting people take action on their own. This feeling of ownership makes them much more motivated in the mission than just being a follower. Number 3 is don't take yourself too seriously. Srdja says you will not gain anything by pretending you are very important. It is the other people that make you important. Now that is a community leader approach. Recognizing that without your platform, you are nothing. So instead of trying to impress or overpower, cater to the people you serve and know they are the reason you will or will not get to where you want to go. Srdja, you have an extraordinary track record of leading movements, including being the leader of the movement that helped topple Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic. What is your unique approach? How would you explain what makes Srdja Popović so effective as a movement leader?
First thing is people power movements are all about the people. So I think what makes a great leader is recognizing human talent, recruiting human talent, and stimulating human talent. If you invest in people power movement, whether you are giving them floor or pollinating your ideas with their ideas, or you train them skills. I'm very passionate about training skills. This is what my day job is about. That's actually the best investment you can do. That leads us to the second point, especially in the era where movements are becoming more and more horizontal. What you want to do if you're a good movement leader is how to spread ownership. Spreading ownership within the movement makes your peers owners of the movement. And people are owners of the movement. They're actually far more likely to invest because they're not just following the thing, they're not just members. They're becoming followers because followers nurture followers, and knowing how to embrace followers as equals is actually the real trick in building the movement. Lastly, a small personal trait. I think one of the things that suits me well is never take yourself too seriously. If you don't take yourself too seriously, it is very likely that other people will take you more seriously. So the trick is always make jokes on your own account. Always try to be relaxed with people. Never try to exercise stiffness. You will not gain any position by pretending that you are very important. It is the other people who make you important.
When you are the leader of a company or a community, you have the power to see exponential return on your investment in your people if you give them the tools they need to go forth and start new initiatives on their own. This is similar to the phrase, you can give a person a fish, or you can teach them how to fish, and they will be able to take care of themselves. The tools Srdja teaches activists can be applied to business, specifically around teaching people how to map out the key players and institutions in their ecosystem, and most importantly, understanding what their incentives are. This is different from competitive analysis, which looks at what a competitor offers. Instead, you can look at what are those other organizations driven by? Who are they influenced by? Or who are they influencing? If your employees or community members understand this fundamental approach to mapping an ecosystem, have the ability to go forward and engage with other people, and most importantly, have the ability to start and lead new initiatives in collaboration with other people and organizations, that's where you can really see exponential growth and the ability to acquire influence by tapping into other networks, all without you as the leader being in charge of it all. Reflecting on your journey, what impact results are you most proud of? How were you uniquely skilled to drive those outcomes?
Let me explain my business model here. So what we do, we train people. that's historically one of the best returns for investment in the world of people power, not only domestically, not only that you invest into the people in your organization and they tend to work better. There are also scientific research which proves that the best things that you can do is invest in the people training and building capacity and skills. The way we do it, we are trying to make social movements, we are trying to make mobilization. Some people would say we are trying to make a revolution user-friendly. So what we do, we take a look at what connects all of these different groups, working from small environmental campaign in Africa all the way to trying to tackle the Venezuelan government when it steals elections. And we break down the principles. What are these things that connect all of these different movements? What are the skills they need? Basically, what we do, we teach them the skills. So rather than consulting and trying to tell people what to do, which is the job of political consultants, my organization, Canvas, is not a political consultancy that way. We give people tools. In social movements, these tools, which are very measurable, is spectrum of allies, meaning do you understand the battlefield? Back to Sun Tzu, know yourself, know your enemy, know the terrain. How do you analyze the terrain? How do you identify constituencies? Then next, moving to institutions, understanding pillars. The way you make the social change is by impacting the institutions. We call these institutions pillars. The way you build strategy is putting this pillar into some orders, teaching people how to do this. At the end, you teach people how to do tactics. So these four tools, which are the core of what we do, is what we teach people. And then we come for investment. It's easy to see. If they plan, they're more capable to develop a strategy. They're capable of building numbers. These movements grow. You can see them grow. They're capable to exercise more effective tactics. So you see people in Bolivia doing stuff, and you see it in social media. There is this moment in time where you see people that you trained leading millions on the street several times. It happens in Georgia, happened in Ukraine, happened in Egypt. So once you see people you train becoming successful, this is the best reward in the world, because if you contributed one single piece of a percent to their change from dictatorship to democracy, then you can have a good night's sleep knowing that you've done something well.
I remember seeing on your website that you've worked with activists from more than 50 different countries. That is incredible.
One of the things that it's very difficult to measure is when you work this group, you're also seeding the seeds. Sometimes you work with a group that does nothing or it's not capable to do anything. But then soon after that, a few years after that, the knowledge and the skills you recognize pops up. So you're also planting a seed by giving people these tools to understand this stuff. They will eventually grow. And investing in the people is sometimes a tricky business. It's not linear like investing in stocks. But when you invest in people, they can pop up here and there and really surprise you in the best possible way.
Srdja first recognizes that people are activists by necessity, such as a tragic event that occurred or the rise of a certain group, and now it's significantly affecting their livelihood. If you're looking to motivate hundreds or thousands of people, you need to first identify what people are driven by. Next, Srdja teaches them the tools and tactics of movement building. He then has them practice it in their own environment with other people. He refers to this peer-to-peer work as activist chemistry, because it energizes the activists and it starts a chain reaction amongst them, attracting other participants into their community. After that, he ignites the movement by connecting the activists in one country to those in other countries, which allows them to see how other activists have done it already or are doing it elsewhere. This inspires them to believe they can do it at home. Think about this in your business or your community. Number 1, identify what truly strikes a chord in the people you want to activate. 2, provide them with the tools they can use to take action and engage with other people that they know. 3, show them on a larger scale that they are not alone and that other people have had success in what they are trying to do. Srdja, in your book, Do Good for Revolution, which was terrific, you shared stories about training activists from around the world, including Lebanon, Egypt, and the Maldives, to use nonviolent strategies to challenge authoritarian regimes and advance political reform. Living under an authoritarian regime is terrifying enough to make anyone afraid of speaking out. How did you successfully motivate these activists to take action and furthermore train them to motivate hundreds or thousands of people in their own communities?
These people are motivated. They come motivated. They find us. The Canvas model is we never search for people because we have a very specific niche, or how the business people will say unique selling proposal. We are training people from dictatorships to build movements. Not too many organizations are designed to do this. People find us and they address us. Then, of course, we double check if they're the good guys or the bad guys, which sometimes can be tricky if they're coming from Eswatini, for example, which is a small country in Africa I couldn't find on the map originally. I started working with these people and figuring out that they are very often more politically sophisticated than the political science students in American university. People are activists by necessity. Most of the activists I work with, they're like me. When I was 19, I was playing a bass guitar in a rock band. I was never thinking I will become an activist, not to mention that I will spend most of my life with activists. The point is, the more you talk about the skills, the more you understand these skills matter. Then how you present the skills to the people, then how you guide them through this process, because our workshops, our guidance is all about giving them little tasks to do and apply the skills in their own environment. Eventually, most importantly, this is peer-to-peer. So one level of this is activist chemistry. This is activists talking to activists, and there is a certain chemistry that you feel between these people. Also, you bring other people. So what we do is we work with the people from country X, but we also zoom in the activists from country, which is kind of a certain level of authoritarian, or it's a certain level of women's oppression, it's a certain level of religious Islam. So it's like you work with Iranians, and then you zoom somebody from Sudan, because if they see that these people have done it, maybe they can do it at home. If they see somebody from a similar environment doing something in a similar environment effectively, then they can come to this idea, we should do it actively. And this is exactly where this catch of motivation is. Then the rest is mobilizing and recruiting and beating the fear. And these are all the skills that people acquire.
If you want to get anything done that involves other people, they first need to be motivated to participate. Even if they are your employee and they technically have to do it, you are going to get a much better response if they are eager to do it. Better yet, if they take initiative and want to lead it or get other people involved. Having led a successful movement himself that resulted in toppling a dictator and training activists from 50 different countries, Srdja Popović knows how to inspire people and get them to take action that can quite literally change the future for millions of people. His advice? Start with a small group of people and paint a future vision for them that is life-changing. In your business, instead of listing a feature or a service, talk about who your customer will be as a result, how their life will be significantly different as a result. Get them to see that new and improved version of themselves, and you'll inspire them to take action, or at least be intrigued enough to learn more. Building and sustaining a movement is no easy feat. And often just getting started is excruciatingly difficult and complex. How would you describe what it takes to actually build and lead a movement? What specific actions would you advise to those looking to take their very first steps?
We had this very short presentation, which are 10 talks on how to build a movement. I actually done it for a business conference. You start with a small group of people, you acquire the key skills, you analyze the battleground, you analyze your pillars. You start thinking about recruiting the very small group of people to engage, because once the people engage, they learn skills, but also they become visible. Then they attract more people. Then they start thinking about the more important things, like knowing where to going, having the vision of tomorrow is also very important things. And then plan your way to victory. Think big, but backwards, start small. So what is this little thing that you can do that can really show that you exist? And then eventually you big towards the building things, understanding how you manage the end game. What you also discover throughout the process is that targeting is everything. You need to know what to target, when to target. And all of these stories about successful action is because the people were planning what to target. American civil rights movement will never win if they didn't figure out that demonstrating in front of the city hall or state house in Alabama will give them nothing, which really turned to boycotting buses. Understanding that you have the road to victory, and that road is not necessarily linear, meaning if we scream enough loud, then the politicians will pity on us or start noting us. It's sometimes very curvy road to the change. And successful groups understand this. They understand these pillars, they analyze the pillars, and they build their strategy around the pillars. So think big, like start with a small group of core people, start with people you know, find what you share, find your passion, enjoy the journey, build your strategy throughout the pillars, and most importantly, feel good about it. One of the things that movements will give you, whether you are successful or not, is that they are changing your life. operating in a people power movement is a life-changing experience, and it can be very addictive.
Ever been to an event and sat next to someone you wouldn't normally interact with because they work in a different industry, but then ended up having a fascinating conversation and learning something new? Better yet, you take what you learned from that conversation and do something new as a result. That is called cross-pollination. And it's something I've witnessed the power of in more than 100 events that I've hosted throughout my career. When you bring people together who wouldn't normally cross paths in real life, you become a catalyst for innovation, new partnerships, new ideas, and you give these new connections a longer life because they continue the conversation on their own beyond your initial involvement. Srdja and his organization Canvas is building a long-lasting legacy where he teaches activists, educates academics on the subjects of activism, and then brings them all together for an annual conference. This is where the magic of cross-pollination happens, and his teachings live on through the people that connect at his conference. They go on to lead big initiatives around the world, such as rallying millions of people to march in the streets of their countries. You are now a professor teaching courses such as movement building, defending democracy, technology movements in the digital era. And while we hope for a world of peace and justice where your tactics aren't necessary, they can still be powerful tools for change. Can you describe how your students will apply what they learn in your classes to their own lives and careers?
We started teaching this course as a workshop at CC in 2008. And since then, Canvas did, I think, 15 different schools ranging from University of Essex to Harvard, NYU. We founded most serious academic home at UVA, which is University of Virginia. And here we do the cross-pollination of three different things. One, we teach classes. We give this insight to students. We teach them how to understand movement through the movement class. And then we move into defending democracy. And this becomes a really growing issue. How you operate in a different environments, how you defend democracy in full authoritarian regime, wobbling democracy or illiberal democracy, the Hungarian, Serbian type of regime. And what happens if somebody tried to seize democracy in democracy? What happens is that from there we grow into technology and social media and this and that. But classes are part of the show. We want to bring activists to academia, and we want to bring academia to help activists. Now, our efforts is an annual conference called People Power Academy that plays every April in UVA. What happens is that we bring top 30, 40 world activists. We connect them with academics, and we have mornings which are presentations on burning topics. This year will be different repressive laws, like Russian law in Ukraine, or the way the people censor internet in Thailand. So you have activists and academics trying to solve the problem. We try to marry their effort. We have a platform where students can volunteer for activists and organizations of this kind. We also have academics interested in the research with activists. So we're kind of cross-pollinating because these two worlds are very different. In the afternoons, we have practical workshops for students and activists. So building more classes, bringing more activists to the academia, doing more research, and really bridging this really weird gap. You have so many people in academia who have such a big knowledge on it, but that knowledge is useless to the activists. In the same time, you have so many activists that are doing amazing things across the globe that academics are reading about in academic journals instead of really going there or tapping the real people. And when you mix these two drinks, then the magic occurs. You get a very good cocktail out of two different substances.
Whether you're trying to disrupt an industry or simply trying to get someone to switch over to your product, Srdja wisely notes that people are reluctant to change, and the bigger the change, the bigger their opposition to it. His advice is to make it personal and to look for groups that can become allies in the change. The way you do this is to find a common denominator, something that is personal and appeals to people's humanness. This allows them to relate, allows them to see what's in it for them, and because of its personal appeal, it can be used to unite different groups. For example, different departments within a company, different organizations within an industry, or different neighborhood groups within a city. Srdja strongly believes that this skill of knowing how to activate people is more powerful than external conditions. For example, in business, market conditions. Getting group buy-in from various people and organizations is difficult. But as Srdja says, if you bring the right skills to a conflict, miracles are possible. Looking at today's world through the lens of your experience, what crucial insights should leaders and companies consider that they're currently overlooking?
First thing is this thing that I borrowed from my friend Greg Sottel. When in a company or in a society, you want to make change in a company, you don't assume people don't understand change. There is an opposition to the change. Bigger the change, bigger the opposition. And that works for both worlds. That works in market, that works in a society. If you really want to change something small, the people will go along with it. But this is changing their lives. If this is changing the way that they're doing job, if they need to make dramatic changes, they'll be reluctant to it. And it's natural for people to be reluctant to it. So you can really say, like spectrum of allies, before you get engaged in change, you figure out what are the constituencies within your environment, where this is a municipality or the company, and you figure out what may be the people's incentive to join. Finding the small common denominator between the constituencies that will join the movement, or finding the smallest common denominator between the parts of the company where you want to pursue the change is the one thing that I think can work universally. The second, it's not enough for people to follow the change. You want them to own the change. So how do you have this change or present this change or design this change? So it's in people's personal interest. People are very selfish animals, the most selfish animals on this planet. We're the only animals that would rather destroy the planet than changing the way how we do business or drive cars. Same with the change. We will participate in change if somebody persuades us it's good for our kids. It's good for our free time. It's good for our wallet. It's good for the quality of our hair. So finding this type of thing is making people owning the change. This is number three. It's skills versus conditions. So skills you bring in the conflict are more important than the conditions. The skill you bring into the process, including understanding the pillars, strategizing, listening to the people, sharing the ideas, recruiting people, not taking yourself too seriously, they are more important than the conditions. You can have the best conditions for change in the world, like in Venezuela, mobilized population, weak government, elections won by opposition 2-1, and still they are unable to capitalize on this change because they lack the skill of planning, because they didn't have an idea what to do when they win, because they lack the ground organization, because they lack the guts to do it, because the political parties are not designed to do this. They need the non-partisan movement, blah, 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 because they need skills. If they had skills, they can get rid of the worst government in the world in Sudan, fighting one of the most difficult militaries in the world ready to kill, like in Sudan, and having the Union bring 50% of their movement force in a country with a deep Islamic division and suppression of women. So if you bring skills to conflict, miracles are possible. Movement leaders should spend enough time planning, like the business leaders. If you take a look at this time break, should be like 30 to 4% of the strategic planning of your time. In other words, if I was given a penny every time somebody from social movement told me, oh, I'm too busy doing things, I don't have time to plan, I would probably have a private plane by now. Unfortunately, I don't. I have 2012 old Buick. Eventually, you need to learn from mistakes as well. And lost battle is defeat, only if you don't learn anything from it. Learning from movements' mistakes is equally or even more important than learning from success. Because with success, you can always get lucky. But with mistake, with defeats, you need to take a look into defeat and figure out and prevent this thing in the future. And I think this works for both worlds.